Elon Musk is attacking the very idea of the state, the very idea of government, of public services. I don't think the UK should be a country where we just accept this narrative. And in fact, I think what we need to do is every time somebody talks about DOGE, we start talking about DOBE. DOBE is the Department of Billionaires Against Everyone Else, and right now it is running the show. DOBE wants three things. Number one, it wants to own everything. So since the 1980s in this country, since Thatcher's sell-offs, we have owned less and less. We don't own our water, our energy. We don't own our public transport. We don't own our Royal Mail. Our NHS is increasingly privatised in all kinds of ways. Our social care, our children's care, all of these things have been sold off, privatised, outsourced. Why does DOBE want this? Well, if they own everything, then we are just renting. We are the revenue stream and we have to pay, whether that's paying through our bills directly or whether that's paying through our tax and then government paying private companies through contracts. And we saw this week how billionaires maintain their power, because this week Thames Water was in court asking for a £3 billion bailout after it racked up a £19 billion debt. And that £3 billion bailout will be paid by Thames Water's 16 million so-called customers who have absolutely no choice about it. Now, Thames Water customers are expecting their bills to go up by 35% in April, and our bills increasing is going to pay for this company to carry on failing to invest in our infrastructure, racking up debt at our expense, and leaking money out in dividends to shareholders. But that's all working for the Department of Billionaires Against Everyone Else, because that makes the most money for the people at the top. So the more they own, the less we own, the poorer we are, the richer they are. It's really as simple as that. These days, the Department of Billionaires Against Everyone Else is completely out of control. Not only do the richest people own our vital key infrastructure that ought to be public, they want to own all of the important infrastructure, all of the commanding heights. They want to own the platforms where we do business, and that gives them an enormous amount of power. Number two, the Department of Billionaires Against Everyone Else wants you to ignore the massive waste of privatisation. Privatisation is incredibly wasteful. It means we're wasting money on dividends that leak out to shareholders around the world. It means that we're wasting money on debt, which is far more expensive in the private sector. Public sector debt is cheaper, so if we invested directly, we wouldn't have to pay this extra cost on the cost of capital. And number three, we're wasting money on creating and regulating artificial markets where they don't belong. So privatisation and outsourcing are incredibly wasteful, and we see examples of that every day. But DOGE does not want you to talk about that. Number three, the Department of Billionaires Against Everyone Else wants to steal your public services. Now, in the UK, we've had 15 years of austerity, of drastic cuts, and of privatisation ramping up. And we've lost public services. Let's have a quick look at some of the services we've lost. Councils have been forced to cut their budgets on every area except social care, education, environmental spending, spending on highways and transport, culture and sport, housing and planning. Spending on community centres and public halls was cut by 39%, and library spending has halved since 2010. Museums and gallery spending was cut by 2/5, and spending on theatres and other public entertainment was cut by 38%. Even less glamorous services that councils provide have been cut, like pest control, trading standard budgets and street cleaning. No wonder everything is in a mess. So while people attack the very idea of public service, if you actually look at what this means in practice, it's devastating for our communities. So the Department of Billionaires Against Everyone Else wants to own as much as possible. And that means that you will own as little as possible. This department wants you to ignore the waste of privatisation, the money leaking out into their pockets around the world. And they want you to fail to realise how important public services are, how they are the social glue that holds us together, how we need them, we need to fund them, and they need to work for all of us. Next time you hear somebody talking about DOGE, let them know about the Department of Billionaires against everyone else, because that is what's really going on.